Great. Welcome in, everyone. See, folks are still connecting to audio, so let everyone get settled. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for our evening session. I'm Sarah Birch. If you haven't met me yet, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment. And I'm really excited about the session that we're able to offer this evening for you all. Self-care is not selfish. Our wonderful Associate Professor of Practice, Lorien Carter, will be leading the session. And so I'm going to turn it over to her. But if you have questions at all, or if anything comes up, please feel free to use the chat. We'll be here to monitor that. And with that, I'll let Lorien take it.
Thanks, Sarah. So thank you all for joining. If you're in the Central Time Zone, it's the end of a Thursday. If you're in any other time zone, it's either even earlier or even later than that. We're really thrilled that you are wanting to get a little bit of a taste for what coursework might be like at the Brown School. And I am an Associate Professor of Practice. I teach in the social work program, but I teach a course called Self-Care for Helping Professionals, which is a cross-listed elective for our social work and public health and social policy degree programs. So this is just a little taste of the kind of content that we cover in that Self-Care for Helping Professionals course. So I'm going to kind of do some setting the stage here. So I want to ask you to put something in the chat. So if you will, share one thing you've done for your own well-being in the last 24-ish hours, or be anticipatory. Like, what's one thing you think that you will do for your own well-being in the next 24 hours? So we'll generate some good information with each other here in the chat. All right. Really fun. Awesome. So I'm going to do something else in the chat. I'm going to post for you a set of handouts. And I'm going to ask you to just hold on getting too far into them. But as we go through our workshop this evening, I'm going to want you to have access to these. So I'm going to put them in the chat for you now. Anybody who joins a little bit later, so one of the Sarahs, if you all wouldn't mind adding the Word doc in the future for anybody who joins us after right now. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. So we're going to talk just a little bit about why self-care matters in particular for the helping professions. We're going to talk about how to think about self-care in a multidimensional way. We're going to explore some self-care practices. And then I'm going to have you leave by creating an intention for ongoing self-care practices. So what I'm going to ask for you to do now is to get comfortable. So if you can be sitting in a chair, that's great, as opposed to laying on your bed, on your back with a phone in front of you. Grab a few pens, colored pencils, markers, if you have them. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but you can go ahead and download that handout packet in the Zoom chat, and then we'll kind of walk through it as we go. Through some of the interactive activities, I'll invite you to keep your cameras on. It helps me not feel like I'm kind of speaking into the void. But when we do some practice activities, you might actually want to have your cameras off. It might feel really uncomfortable to, for example, do some chair stretches while other people are watching you. So it's always fine with me if you turn your cameras off for anything that is kind of an individual practice, but during their interactive times, it'll be really great if you're willing and able to leave your cameras on, so that it just feels like a little bit more of a class. And that's pretty similar to the way that I set my my remote class expectations, regardless of what the topic is. I tell students they can be off camera during lectures, but on camera when we're doing discussion or any interactive pieces. So I'm kind of modeling that for you here. So I invite you also to just keep an open mind. We're going to try a few things tonight. You may like them, you may not like them. The idea is just to help you build a deep and wide toolkit. So keep an open mind as we walk through some things, and we'll kind of check in with you at the end of our session to see what you really enjoyed or what you're like, I'm not ever going to do that thing again. So we got to kind of start by talking about what's the opposite of self-care? What happens when we actually neglect the things that our body needs? And so a lot of times we can think about stress being multidimensional. The impact of stress on our body is that we might have more headaches. We might have a harder time. Our immune system gets kind of worn down. So we get more colds and we get more infections. We might just be tired all the time. Our emotions are impacted by self-neglect. We're irritable, we have anxiety, we may actually feel symptoms of depression. Our mind is impacted. It's harder for us to put cognitive thought together, so that muddled thinking. When we're overwhelmed, we can't even kind of think like, what's the next right thing to do? And then it has an impact on our behaviors as well. We're more likely to smoke or drink more or eat more, right? We think about eating our feelings sometimes. We might notice that we don't enjoy pleasure. We might have less of a sex drive or less of a drive for kind of appetite and enjoying things in our life. So, just for no other reason than these things, it's important to think about what can we do to kind of, to buffer the stress that we all feel in our lives. But it matters a whole lot for the type of work that you're all going to do with us. So, I'm anticipating you're joining us at the Brown School in the fall. And within 2 to 3 years of that, you're going to be out in the world as a professional, and you're going to be in one of the helping professions. So either social work, public health, or social policy. All of those degree programs have inherent in them a lot of stress as you think about what is the work that you're going to do. In a lot of places, there's not a lot of training about the risks that are inherent in our professions. Then a lot of places, there are not very many strategies that are actually integrated into the formal curriculum. And so, if we don't actually teach you what are those risks for you in the helping professions, we actually send you out into the world less prepared. And of course, that is never our goal at the Brown Schools, to send you out into the world not prepared for what we want you to do. So we actually want to prepare you for having, again, this deep and wide toolkit of resources, because it will then be a buffer against some of the things that we see, especially in our fields around compassion fatigue. Sometimes that's called the cost of caring, vicarious trauma, secondary traumatic stress, and burnout. And so we want to make sure that we're sending you into your career prepared to not get burned out and be in this career for a really long time. So this is also a mandate from our codes of ethics. So because I teach in the social work program, I'm a social worker by training, I pulled from our NASW code of ethics a couple elements where our code actually says this is an expectation that social workers will not allow problems, psychosocial distress, legal problems, substance use, mental health difficulties to get in the way of our ability to do our jobs. And that when we experience those personal problems, psychosocial distress, legal problems, substance abuse, we have to immediately seek consultation and take appropriate remedial action. So I want us to be able to get out ahead of this and prevent some of those really significant concerns from happening. And knowing that at any point we do have this obligation, so that we can show up for the people that we've dedicated our lives to working with. So there's a couple, there are some occupational risks built in to social work, public health, and social policy. Compassion fatigue is just the exhaustion that comes from working directly or indirectly with and for clients. So we often think about our clinical practitioners experiencing compassion fatigue, where it's, the work is unrelenting, it is every day. We're working with folks who have really significant life challenges, and we're hearing those day in and day out. But we also want to pay attention to compassion fatigue that happens for those of us who might be more in the meso or macro practice. So we think about what it takes to lobby effectively for a law or an ordinance or a policy that is just. That's exhausting work too. And it takes a really long time to see change when we're advocating for a new policy that is going to address an injustice. And so compassion fatigue happens for our folks in meso macro spaces as well. We think about secondary traumatic stress, sometimes that's called vicarious trauma, and that is where you actually have a stress response from hearing the trauma of the people that you're working with. And we do see this a lot in our providers who are doing clinical practice. When you're helping a client or a group of clients or families really move forward from a traumatic experience, you're having to take all of that in. And if you don't have a way to sort of let that out, it will have an impact on us. And that impact of both compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress is burnout. We know that research says that without some kind of intervention, like learning how to have a deep and wide toolkit of self-care strategies, that folks will leave the profession of social work within about 3 to 5 years. If they just keep trying to do the best they can without this toolkit, you'll get exhausted really quickly and you won't be able to find your way back. And that's, that is disappointing for a lot of reasons. One, you are all about to invest a lot of yourself. Maybe that is finances, maybe it is time, maybe it is energy into a graduate program. And we want you to see the return on that investment. And that return on that investment is the years of the career that you have in front of you. And if you leave that career in the next 3 to 5 years, you might still be paying off your student loans. But even more than that, the number of people that you will not serve because you got burnt out is significant. And that matters a lot to those clients that you would not serve. It matters a lot to agencies. It can cost an organization up to 200% of someone's salary to replace that person. So if you leave, then it costs your agency a lot of money to rehire and retrain and reorient someone to that position, only for them to leave within the next 3 to 5 years, right? So there's an impact at that kind of organizational level as well. So this is all this is what can happen if we don't develop this deep and wide set of tools, but there is lots and lots of research out there that tells us kind of what to do. So I think we have to start by acknowledging that this is, and you see these graphics on my slide here, that this is the airplane rule, right? If any of you have traveled, again, pre-pandemic, maybe you remember traveling, but remember hearing things like, if you need to use your oxygen mask, put your oxygen on first before you help those around you. It is this idea that we have to be healthy in order to help our clients get healthy. We can't do the job that we are designed to do if we are not in a really, really good place. So I like some of these other visuals on here. In addition to the oxygen mask, is this idea of being nourishing to flourish. You have to nourish in order to flourish, and that is through your flourishing that you actually do the best work for your clients. And that an empty lantern provides no light. That self-care is actually that fuel that allows your light to shine so brightly and be that beacon for the people that you might work with. So what are the barriers to self-care? So I'm going to again invite any of you to just go ahead and yell out an answer if you want to, raise your hand if you want to use that feature in Zoom, toss it in the chat, anything you'd like to do. What gets in the way? Yeah, I see time from a couple people. Competing priorities. Oh, yes, this culture of being overproductive. Yeah. So in some cases, it's the people we are responsible for, our children, right? That the workload is really significant. It's overwhelming. Yeah. So here's what I will say. Time, for sure. It comes up very, very often, right? That we don't have time to take care of ourselves. Even if you block time for yourself, it's the first thing to go, right? If you like to go to the gym 3 times a week, but man, this class is only offered those evenings of the week. And so suddenly we find ourselves without a gym routine, right? We let ourselves we don't block the time for ourselves the way we would block the time for our classes, for our work, for our children. That's definitely one of the biggest barriers. And then also, what are we going to, like, what to do, right? This, it's not news to most of you that we need to take care of ourselves. But there sometimes is this gap between people telling you to use self-care and people actually showing you how to do that, right? So there's sort of a knowledge gap, that yes, it seems like we should be taking care of ourselves, but really what does that look like? How do I do it? If I'm going to make a commitment to caring for myself, what would that actually look like in practice? So that's why we have this workshop this evening. So what I like to think about is that self-care is multidimensional. And I think this is really important because we talk about that deep and wide toolkit. We want to have multiple things that we can use, because, again, going back to this graphic from before, right? Because stress is multidimensional and it has multidimensional impacts on us. We might experience it more in our bodies. We might experience it more in our emotions. Our self-care strategies have to align to that. Right? So if stress has an impact on our body, there are some self-care strategies that are physical in nature that can really be that buffer against the impact of stress on our body. If stress is really impacting your mind, then we want to think about what's psychological self-care. What are the strategies that fall into that bucket that can buffer against stress impact on our mind? Similarly, if we know that we're very emotional when we're stressed, then we want to think about what does emotional self-care look like? And then behavior and spirituality don't really go together, but I kind of made this nice graph, so I'm going to act as if they do for the moment. But that there is a spiritual, or at least this sense of bigger than me. And sometimes we, in the self-care skills lab that I teach, we talk about spiritual and social self-care as going together. In many cases, social self-care then does act as a buffer against some of those stress behaviors, right? If we are enjoying the people that we're around, we're more engaged in kind of pro-social healthy behaviors along with them. So what does that maybe look like? So if you want to take a look at the handout packet that I had you download from the chat, you will see the first handout in that packet is the self-care wheel, which you also see on this slide, but it's much easier to read if you take a look at the full page version in your handout. And these are just options. So usually when people hear self-care, they start to think about all the things that they're supposed to do that they don't want to do. So for example, if someone says, you need to engage in physical self-care, like go to the gym more often, you got to work out. I saw some of you put in the chat that is something you've done for your personal well-being in the last 24 hours. If that's all that self-care could be for me, I would be a miserable human because I don't like to run. I take my dogs for walks, but that's really about it, right? So I need to know that there's a variety of things I can do in the realm of physical self-care that don't include running a 5K. And I also need to know that there are things outside of that physical realm, right? That there are things that I could do around my spiritual or my emotional or my psychological well-being. Right? So there's just a couple options on here, that there are lots of things that you can do for self-care, like disconnecting from tech, turn down unhelpful conversations. You see it on another slide here, another picture on this slide, setting good boundaries. One of the things we spend a lot of time talking about in the self-care skills lab is that one of the most important strategies we have is assertive communication. And assertive communication allows us to set boundaries. It allows us to create boundaries in relationships with people. It also allows us to say no to things in our work life or in our school life that by saying yes to them, we end up more stressed. And so if we can learn assertive communication and boundary setting, we can actually keep things off of our plate to begin with. And the less things we have competing for our very limited amount of time, the more likely it is that we can complete those things in the amount of time that we have. So thinking about that, assertive communication is a self-care strategy, has nothing to do with being mindful, has nothing to do with doing 10 minutes of guided meditation or running that 5K. It comes from learning how to have hard conversations and saying no when what we really mean is no, right? I think what we are likely to do is say maybe when what we really mean is no. And sometimes if you're at all like me, we say yes really grudgingly, like fine, I will do it. And then we resent it from the very, very minute that we've said yes to it. And so if we can learn how to really just think differently about what we say yes to, I've gotten really good at saying, let me think about that. and I'll get back to you. And then I take the time to kind of check in with myself about this request that has been made of me. And if I do this, how will that affect every other request that has been made of me? How will it impact all of the other things that are already on my plate? And then I get back to that person with a response that is yes or maybe or no. And sometimes it's maybe because I just need to learn more, and I need to understand a little bit more. What is the expectation here? So boundary setting is a really, really important type of self-care that doesn't often get talked about. But if we can do that, man, then we might actually have some time to do some of these other things as well. All right, so now we're going to start kind of talking about and practicing through several different types of self-care strategies. Meditation or mindful practice is one of the self-care strategies that has the most evidence behind it. Mindfulness-based stress reduction is a name-branded model of meditation and mindful practice. We know that meditating for just 8 weeks actually changes our brain's structure. It increases gray matter in the part of our brain that's associated with learning. So this is a really, really key type of self-care. And the other idea that I really, really love on this slide here is that when you own your breath, nobody can steal your peace. That your breath is always with you. You can ground and center into a day just by remembering that. So we're going to do one now. So again, if you've had your camera on, feel free to turn that off. We're going to do a 3-minute mindful breathing exercise. And if you're one of those people who thinks, I can't meditate, this won't work for me, again, keep an open mind. It may or may not be your cup of tea, but it's at least worth trying to see what is it like if I just take 3 minutes and practice breathing.
Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
All right. So I'd like to hear from a few of you. What was it like to do this for 3 minutes?
I can share.
Thanks.
So for me, I started off feeling pretty calm, but then my thoughts were going all over the place. So I appreciated how they said to redirect our thoughts back to our breathing. And then towards the end, I started focusing on the actual activity. And then that's when I got back to feeling more calm.
Great. Anybody else? What was it like to do this?
So I think I'm one of the people that meditation doesn't work really well for, because my anxiety and my autism just kicked into hyperdrive when I tried to do it. It's like, nope, this is not, it was like, this isn't working. So I actually decided I'm going to zone out, and I had one of my cats crawl into my lap as I was doing it. I'm like, I'm just going to pet you, because that's just going to be more effective for me than trying to meditate well at the moment.
Yeah. So you make a really interesting point, right? That, meditation seems like something you can't do, but being mindful in this moment, you can do. And sometimes it's the petting of a cat or a dog or the smell of a lovely tea that helps you remain grounded and centered, as opposed to, noticing how the breath comes into your body and how the breath leaves your body. So I would say, my reframe of you can't do it is, it looks different for you, but there is something that you can spend a few minutes being really mindful about, and just picking what that thing is really important to kind of find your thing, right? Anybody else have similar feelings that, like, this just is not my thing? Yeah, I used to think it wasn't my thing either. I now have more than 2,000 consecutive days of meditation. I have not missed a day since August of 2015. I started meditating in August of 2013, and it took me a really long time. And the whole reason I started meditating was because I needed to have this kind of mind-body connection after a health situation. And I said to a friend of mine, she said, you need to meditate. Like, that's a really great way to get a mind-body connection. I'm like, I can't do that. When I go to yoga, the last 10 minutes of yoga, when we're in corpse pose, savasana, and they're like, telling everyone to breathe in and breathe out, I'm planning my grocery list. I'm thinking about where I got to go today. I can't meditate. And she said, challenge accepted, and came to my house. She was a neighbor, which made it easy. Came to my house at 6:30 in the morning every day for an entire summer, and said, I'm not here for a social call. We're not having coffee. We're not chatting. We are here to teach you how to meditate. And at the end of the summer, she said, see, you can do it. And I still meet with a few friends for a meditation group once a week now. But she, it was like, I didn't think I could do it either, but there was something about the necessity of, I needed to change some things in my life, and I was willing to try anything, including getting up early every morning just to try a few minutes of mindfulness. So if you are one of those people that says, like, this can never work, it may never work, and that's okay, because we're going to build a deep and wide toolkit. But it might be worth trying a few more times in a few more different ways, so that you can see if it actually is a strategy that could work for you in the future. Because this is one of the things that I've learned, is that, past does not always predict future. All right. So there's another self-care strategy that some of you may be familiar with. It's this idea of gratitude journaling it comes out of positive psychology, the idea that when we focus our thoughts and our attention on positives, on things that we are grateful for or thankful for, it actually can change our mindset. And so there's some research that suggests that people who regularly journal journal about gratitude or have some kind of gratitude practice have reduced stress. It helps them focus on what's really important. It helps you learn about yourself. It also is this place where when you're having a rough day, you can review your daily gratitude journals from days past to put your mind and your attention on the good things instead of getting caught up in perseverating on all the overwhelm and all the negatives that feel like they take over our life. So I have a gratitude practice. I'm not nearly as consistent as I am with meditation, but I use a 5-minute journal app that reminds me at the beginning of every day to think about what I want to do to make my day great, and then reminds me at night to write down 3 things that have, that I was grateful for, I was thankful for, or 3 positive things in my life that day. And I've noticed that the days that I do it, sometimes I'm stretching, right? Like sometimes I'm like, I am grateful for this day being over. Like that is the most I can come up with at the end of a day. That counts, right? That is still something to be grateful for, is that I have survived, and even if I haven't thrived, I have survived another day. And so being really okay with it doesn't have to be grandiose things. You don't have to be grateful for, anything other than I'm breathing, I got a cat on my lap, I have a safe place to lay my head tonight. And if that is true for you, there's your 3 things to get you through. And then what you'll find is that over time, you are grateful for different things, and you're grateful for maybe the same people, right? The situations that you're grateful for may change, but the people that are really there in your life show back up in your gratitude journal in a kind of a fundamental and exciting way. So you have a gratitude journal page in that handout. So I'm going to play a little bit of relaxing music for you for about 5 minutes. And I am going to invite you to take 5 minutes to journal. You can either journal in the handout if you want to, or you can just open up a blank Word document. If you happen to have a lovely little journal somewhere near you that you have ever used, go ahead and break that out. This is the time for those coloring pencils or pens. And again, I'm going to turn off our cameras. I'm going to turn on some music and set a timer for about 5 minutes. So I'll see you back here in about 5. So about 2 more minutes. All right. So the music has ended. That's our gratitude journaling time. Same question as before. What was it like to do this for 5 minutes? Was it easy? Was it hard? What made it easy or hard?
I can share. It was not difficult for me. It's something that I already do, and kind of like I also meditate regularly, not 2,000 days in a row yet, but I'll get there. Um, but what I have found with gratitude journaling and meditation, like I might not do it every single day, but they are like my little building blocks, right? So like if I have a self-care grab bag, I might like take 3 things out of it, and those might be 2 of the things. And also what I wanted to say earlier about meditation, especially because I also came in as someone who didn't think it was for me, was that they call it a practice for a reason. That's what I found. You know, it like starting small and maybe inconsistently, and like there's no right way to do it. So just putting that out there. Anyway, I love all of this. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else, especially if gratitude journaling was new for you? How was it to spend 5 minutes trying something that you hadn't previously tried?
So for me, the gratitude journaling is not a new activity because I've been doing it for the past 4 years. When I was in college, one of my friends recommended it to me. So after she told me about it, I started to do it. And I've just found it to be like a source of stability for me. Like what you were talking about earlier, sometimes when things get crazy, it helps me to keep perspective and just think about the things that are important to me. And sometimes it's not even about the big things, it's about the little things too. So I love it. I've been doing it for a while, so I'm just gonna keep at it.
Great. Maybe one more person. Anybody else want to share what gratitude journaling practice just maybe brought up for you?
For me, I used to do gratitude journaling pretty regularly, like years ago. And then I stopped at some point because I think I ran out of paper. But I remember like it did really stable, like it was a stapling moment every morning. And just being grateful for even the small things. Like I wrote down like I'm grateful for like water or air, and it just kind of reminds me that like even the small things, there's a reason to be grateful for. Because sometimes like I tend to wake up like dreading the day when I have to go to work, but like yeah, even the small things, when you're reminded of that, it's like it brings a lot of peace. Also, I like pulled this journal out that my friend gave me like 4 months ago, and it has like these like daily trackers, and yeah, I'm grateful that I have a reason to pull this out, and I think I'm gonna do this every day now.
Great. Good, good, good. All right. So you already heard me say I'm not going to be running a 5K very often, but it is important to think about how we physically move our bodies. So this next strategy that I want to introduce you to is a strategy that I have come to appreciate during the pandemic more than ever before in my life. I am spending a whole lot more time sitting in front of a screen and sitting than I used to. So typically I teach 4 classes a semester. I usually teach in person, which means for 3 hours a day, every day of the week, or 4 days out of the week, I am up, I am moving around, I'm walking around my students' desks, I'm, kind of listening in on conversation, I'm watching them practice something, I'm demoing an activity. And all of that came to a really, really, really abrupt halt last March, where I had to pivot from all of those in-person learning experiences to online learning experiences. And I feel like in some ways I got the hang of how to have an interactive-ish online class, but I'm certainly not moving my own body the way I was. And so there are times when I will literally sit down at my computer, my desk, where you're watching me right now with my, my living room in the background, and I will be there from 8:30 in the morning until close to 6 at night between grading and classes and Zoom meetings, which have become a thing. I have not literally gotten up out of this chair. And so this has been something that I have much more recently come to appreciate, is this idea of physical movement while sitting in my chairs. So there are lots of ways that physical self-care can show up, but what I'm going to have us do now is about 5 minutes of a 10-minute chair yoga video. Again, if you don't want to see it, if you don't want us to see you stretching as you sit in your chair, feel free to turn your video off for this, and we'll check back in and see how it was in a few minutes. Maybe.
Because your passion never runs out, you deserve monthly income that does the same. In over 100 years, we've never missed a payment. Guaranteed monthly income for life when you retire.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video. By request, I'm going to be doing a yoga for the office or for travel type of video. So if you are somebody who works in an office all day or who sits for long periods throughout the day, this is definitely something you might want to start incorporating into your day just to feel a little bit better overall. When you're ready, have a seat on your chair. Let's get started. So what you're going to want to do is sit at the edge of your chair, roll your shoulders back. And the reason why we want to sit at the edge of the chair is because it kind of helps to tilt your pelvis back just a little bit so we're not like hunching over like this. So sit nice and tall, roll your shoulders back, lay your hands in your lap, and just take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale fully through your mouth. Just take a second to arrive into the present moment, let go of anything that happened earlier or any of your to-do lists for later. And then begin to breathe fully and deeply in and out through your nose. Begin to visualize that air, that energy moving through your body. So as you inhale, notice that you feel a little bit taller. And as you exhale, notice that your shoulders are kind of pulled by gravity down away from your ears, so you can relax that area of your body, tops of the shoulders. And then gently open up your eyes, and as you inhale, lift your arms up overhead, look up, then interlace your fingers, bring your hands behind your head, and gently draw your chin to your chest, pulling your elbows in ever so slightly, and then making sure that your back stays nice and long. Don't round through your upper back. On your next inhale, lift your head, open up your elbows as wide as you can, look up. And then as you exhale, draw your elbows back in, chin to chest, long spine. Inhale, lift, open the elbows, look up. Exhale, draw elbows in, chin to chest, upper back nice and tall. Inhale, lift your arms overhead. Exhale, left hand to right thigh. Bring your right hand back behind you, grab hold of your chair or maybe the arm of the chair, whatever works for you. And just a gentle stretch, a gentle twist to the right. Looking out over your right shoulder. And then as you inhale, float back to center. Lift your arms up overhead. Exhale, right hand to left leg, left hand back behind you, wherever feels good. Look out over your left shoulder, very gentle twist. And then as you inhale, come back to center. We're gonna cross the right ankle over the left thigh. I'm gonna turn my chair just slightly so you can see a little bit better. So right ankle over left thigh. Now, if your leg is up like this means you're very tight through your hips, and that's okay. What you're gonna wanna do is just try to relax that leg as much as you can. Invite that knee to open up a little bit more, but don't push. Just let gravity pull and do its work, and just breathe wherever you are. Gently flex your foot, spread your toes, sit nice and tall. As you inhale, lift your arms up overhead. And then as you exhale, begin to melt forward. Now, if you're feeling something already and your body's like, stop, then stop. But if you need to go a little bit further until you feel something going on, go until you feel something. Breathe wherever you are. And then as you inhale, rise up. As you exhale, we're going to do that same little twist that we did before. Very gentle, not forcing anything, maintaining that flex in the right foot. Inhale, come back to center. We'll take it to the other side. Right foot comes down, left ankle crosses over right thigh. Lift your arms up overhead. And then come as far forward as you need to. Just stop when you feel something going on in the back of the left hip. You might notice that one leg feels more open than the other. That's totally normal. That often has to do with whether you're always crossing your left leg over your right versus the other way. So just be mindful about how you move through your life when you're off the mat and how that may impact the tightness in your body. When you're ready, rise up, gentle twist to the other side. Very easy, gentle, soothing twist.
All right. So, again, that was about 5 minutes of a little bit longer of a video. Anyone want to share how this experience was this evening to try this self-care strategy?
I can share. Yeah, I'm definitely someone that carries a lot of stress in like my back and my shoulders. And I think sitting on Zoom all day definitely like builds up a lot of tension. So I appreciated how simple this was and how easy it is, like even doing between meetings or between classes. And I feel like it really calmed me down since I like do feel like such like that physical manifestation of stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, so in the chat, it feels really good. My back feels nicer even after just 5 minutes. It's great to hear. So you have a example of this in the packet, and what I really like about the example that that shows you kind of what some of those poses might be is that it says this might not work for your body, honor your body, right? And I heard the yoga instructor in this video say the same thing. It's okay if your body doesn't do just this way, modify for you. And so I think that's an important kind of element in any kind of physical movement, is to recognize that some of us are more able to do some movements than others of us are able to do, and that there's still a way to practice this by honoring your own body. All right. So I included a coloring page for you in the handout packet. So some of you, when you mentioned something that you've done for your self-care in the last 24 hours, somebody actually said some coloring. There actually is evidence and research behind this that says that coloring, it doesn't matter whether you are coloring in an adult coloring book, which you might have to pay more money for, or you're coloring in a kid's coloring book that you can pick up at the dollar store. It is the act of coloring and kind of that clears your brain, reduces anxiety, increases mindfulness, and there's some really fun ways to make your own mandala. And a mandala is just a pretty pattern that you can kind of get into coloring the different kind of squares and circles. So I'll post these slides in the chat for you before we leave today, and so you can see the video on how to create your own mandala. But I included a coloring page for you. Didn't want people to have to print it out and color during our session, but wanted you to have access to it in case you do want to print it out and color after our session. So I wanted to spend our last few minutes together thinking a little bit about how this was. So we spent a little less than an hour. Would love to hear from any of you about what it was like to sample these, how you're feeling at the end of the workshop. Did you learn something new today? Did you get reminded of something that you remembered that you'd learned in the past? And what do you want to set an intention for? So I know that's a whole lot of questions asked all at once. So you can answer one or more of these prompts.
So I'm not sure this answers any of the questions, but like one of the most difficult things for me when it comes to self-care is that like whenever I say, okay, you're going to do it like, you know, every day or something, it always in my mind becomes almost like work. It's like another thing in my schedule. And so it's like, it's counterintuitive because you want it to be something enjoyable, but then like I come home from work and I'm like, okay, now I have to do this thing and it's another thing I have to do. So I think that's always been like my biggest struggle in terms of like getting into the routine of doing self-care.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. And what I will say is at the beginning, it does feel like more work because it's like anything that you're learning, a new skill, a new strategy. It's a different kind of work maybe than your other coursework might be or your job work might be, but it is work. And I think the example, the quote that we heard a little while ago, it's called a practice for a reason, right? That early on whenever you're doing something new, you have to you have to create in some ways a sense of an obligation, right? I was obligated to my neighbor who was going to knock on my door at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, so that was like, that felt like work. And it is kind of, it's getting into the routine and the habit and finding the right thing that eventually doesn't feel like work, right? That like actually starts to feel like this is meaningful. And I wish I could tell you like what day in the last 2,000 days that happened. And I can't really, it's cumulative over time. But you're absolutely right that if it feels like more work, you sort of just have to talk yourself through that and say, this is work. Lots of things in my life are work. Those are valuable because everything else I do is valuable work. Maybe I'm getting paid for it. Maybe I'm going to get a reward at the end of it, like a good grade. And so seeing this is the same thing. This is work and you'll get a reward at the end of it. And the reward is peace. The reward is a body that does not feel like it is completely turning in on itself. Those are rewards and that you can actually gift to yourself by starting with this this idea of I'm gonna do this thing even when it's hard at the beginning. Right? Saw something in the chat that somebody really enjoyed the gratitude journaling, and then this idea of really kind of being intentional about what are you journaling about. So then the very last handout in your packet is a place for you to do a brief action plan. So we know that people set intentions all the time, and intentions without action just kind of live as intentions. And so what I would really encourage you to do is take a few minutes using this start, stop, continue graphic, and think about one thing that you want to start doing to support your own well-being and self-care, one thing you want to keep doing. So if you're returning to a practice like coloring or like gratitude journaling, and then maybe there's something that you've been doing that is actually sabotaging your wellness and self-care, and what you might want to do to actually stop that. So this is your own reflection. You're not sharing this with anybody. And so I'll invite you to do that maybe in the last, after we kind of hit my final slide here, take some time to build that action plan around those intentions. So if you really enjoyed this, first of all, come to the Brown School. And then secondly, take this 1 credit self-care for helping professional skills lab. I teach it every spring semester. And between now and then, trying any of these on for size and getting one of those as a new habit in your life will support you when you come to the Brown School long before you take this skills lab. And it will support you even if you choose another program. You will bring those self-care strategies into anything that you do across your career. But we'd really love to hear if between now and the fall you try these and it helps you decide to come to the Brown School. Look me up, send me an email. My email's on this slide. I will love to hear how you are embedding some self-care strategies into your life. Any questions for me as we kind of end our day together? So thank you. Thank you for spending an hour with me. Thanks for trying on some new things. It was a great way to introduce you to a little bit of the Brown School and a little bit about what some classes at the Brown School could actually be like. Take care, everybody.